Sometimes when we hear the word bias, we immediately think, bias. That just sounds bad. Well, bias gets a bit of a bum rap. Our brains develop biases as a way to adapt to our environment. They help us to be nimble, to make quick decisions. For example, if you're walking down a dark alley and you spot a shadow, a cognitive bias might lead you to assume that there's danger ahead and you need to retreat. The shadow may have been nothing at all, but relying on mental shortcuts can often get us out of harm's way. This is especially important in situations where decisions need to be made quickly. For example, in the boardroom, the negative aspects of pessimism and optimism biases can cause a culture of either risk aversion or one that takes too much unmitigated risk. But on the flip side, sometimes people with these biases can counter each other and therefore cause more fulsome dialogue. The range of divergent thinking gets expanded, leading to better boardroom decisions. Or in-group bias. In-group bias can both create harmful cliques or help with board unity and solidarity. Conformity bias makes for a board that fails to challenge assumptions, while also having the benefit of being highly respectful, putting the organization and the collective ahead of self-interest. Courtesy bias, too, can be a good thing. I mean, really, how can you knock courtesy? Boards with this bias work well together with management. And even egocentric bias can be a good thing in the right circumstance. The problem with cognitive bias is that for the most part, it's unconscious. So what can we do about unconscious bias when we don't even know what we don't know because it's unconscious to us? Well, here's 3 actions that you can take to eliminate harmful boardroom bias. Reflect, reflect, and then reflect again. First, self-reflect. Each board member should be encouraged to put energy into self-awareness and personal reflection. A great tool for helping with this is the use of self or peer assessment. Second, reflect on the board as a collective. Engage in planned reflection at the board level. A simple tool for this is post-meeting evaluations and reflections. Another effective tool is to undertake a robust, independently conducted comprehensive board evaluation. Then third, reflect on the board management relationship and interactions. Try this. Set aside time for the board to meet with the CEO and identify the 3 most recent times where there was a positive interaction between the board and management. And then identify the 3 most recent times where there was a less than positive one. Systematically work through each of these against the most common biases. The top 7 most common boardroom biases are pessimism, optimism, conformity, anchoring, confirmation, in-group, and egocentric. So look for patterns. Is one or more of these biases common to our interactions? What can we learn from this? What can we change? How can we change? Let me make my point with a story. Back in the days of MySpace, I watched a board with both an optimism and an anchoring bias blow their company up in what was a foreseeable error in judgment. Now, I'm dating myself here, but this was back when YouTube and Facebook were the new kids on the block. The organization was in the communications business, and they decided they wanted to be the new big fish in the pond. They knew that one social platform would end up on top, and the overly optimistic case made by the CEO made them believe it could be them. The board was sold, and all they saw were the buckets of money the CEO convinced them would be pouring in really soon. They raised a pile of cash, hired some programmers, and set out to take over the world. Things did not go well from the start. There were so many holes in their plan. There were programming issues, marketing issues, branding issues. They raised a fair amount of initial funding, but it was only a fraction of what it was really going to take to get the job done. There were several red flags, and they ignored most of them. Most of their external advisors said their strategy was flawed, yet they were so bought into it, they could not back off. They were anchored in it. Even when it was failing fast, they kept pouring more and more money into the project. They just didn't want to give up on it. They kept digging the hole deeper and deeper, fueled by an optimism bias and anchored in the belief that if they didn't give up, they could make it happen. They could be the online social platform that would win the world's market share in the social space and get rich doing it. Eventually, it took the whole company down. Sometimes we get anchored in something even if it's irrational. We cling to that anchor and we let it take us deeper into the depths of the sea. Don't let cognitive bias sabotage your boardroom. Reflect, reflect, and then reflect again.